Hello everybody. Here's something you might not know. According to Elaine Houston, a behavioral researcher for PositivePsychology.com, roughly 51% of people will self-report as introverts when surveyed. Now, you've probably heard that term before thrown around, but do many of us really know what it actually means? What are the behavioral and psychological differences that define these two types of people? And what are the behavioral implications that we can take from that? In this speech, I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the differences, which is that introverts and extroverts appear to have different cortical arousal resting rates. To cover that, I'm going to go over the cortical arousal theory basics, then how those theories relate to the differences between introverts and extroverts, and then some practical information you can take into your future based on that theory. Now, I hope that after this, you'll be able to better understand your own introversion or extroversion level and know how to adapt your environment to make sure that you thrive based on your needs. Let's begin. One of the very first researchers who had an interest in studying introversion and extroversion as a personality and what caused it was a man named Hans Eysenck. In his research, he focused on the concept of arousal and its relation to task performance. To help you understand his somewhat complicated ideas, I made a convenient little graph. So according to Eysenck, cortical arousal is best when you're in a moderate zone. If you have too little arousal, think of when your assignment is weeks away. You're bored, you don't feel motivated, you probably won't be able to retain your attention on it very well, and your performance is going to show that. On the other hand, if you're too stressed, you wait until the last minute to do your project, you're going to have a similar situation. Only this time your performance is going to suck because you're overwhelmed, you're overstimulated, you're on edge. Eysenck proposed that the best way to improve performance is to regulate your cortical arousal to be somewhere in this area, what he called the zone of optimal arousal. In this arousal state, you are alert, mindful, give full attention, and you feel awake. You feel yourself, and you produce your best work possible. So with the basics down, let's talk about what that actually means for introverts and extroverts. Well, the main difference is that the resting arousal rates differ based on whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. For an extrovert, you're looking at starting a little bit lower. Your monkey brain is not going to be as easily stimulated as, say, an introvert. Introverts have more cortical arousal at resting because they have more cerebral activity going on, and so they need far less stimulation to push themselves into performance. However, with that said, they're also more prone to being overstimulated, and likewise, extroverts are more prone than introverts to be understimulated, bored, etc. And so, with that information about introverts and extroverts, what do we do with that? What are the practical implications? Well, let's talk about it. For one, you should be trying to meet your cortical arousal needs. You're going to want to aim for your zone of optimal arousal when you're doing performances or tasks that matter. You'll end up with your best work, and you will probably feel good doing it. However, cortical arousal isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. Introverts and extroverts, and even within those categories, people in general, vary in terms of their different rates. And so we have to take this into account if we want to thrive. Let's think of studying, for example. Now, a lot of people like to study with background noise, and according to cortical arousal theory, that makes sense. Both types of people start off a little bit lower than their peak performance, and so both will try to regulate it up to do better. However, how much stimulation you need is really going to impact that, right? An introvert might be completely fine with the mild stimulation of, say, an instrumental track or electronic music. However, if you're an extrovert, that's just not going to cut it. You're going to have your monkey brain in the background still telling you, I need more stimulation, let's go do something, right? And so you need to be able to A, identify whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, and B, start thinking about how you can regulate this arousal. if you're constantly just going with the flow in your environment, you might end up in some situations that fit your needs, but more often than not, you're going to come up missing. So, this theory and the knowledge provided by it allows us the possibility to alter our environment to our needs and encourage us to be in a optimal state of past performance at all times. Now, with all that said, I covered a little bit about the basics of cortical arousal theory, how they explain the differences between introverts and extroverts, and also just a little bit about what you should take from this behaviorally in the future. I hope that this did help you understand introverts and extroverts better, and that you know how to use those cortical arousal rates to your advantage rather than having them control you and your performance. Thank you. Have a great rest of your term.